All right, everybody, we are back. I just finished talking to you a bit about political power. Power in regards to personal power. I'd next like to move on to psychological power. So what does psychological power means? Well, if personal power, it has to do with ourselves. Psychological power has to do with influencing those around us, being able to really get in their heads and make the shift, whether it's the idea of getting them to believe something that we believe, getting them to change their behavior, getting them to change their mind, getting them to change their ideals, getting them to change a product that they use, however it works. In this case, we'll take a look at another image, if you will. This is a cartoon that I always find very effective in regards to psychological power, if you will. If you look to the woman on the left, everything covered but her eyes. What a cruel, dominated culture. In the other case, nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel, male-dominated culture. Oftentimes we are told one thing about what culture looks like and who is wrong, who is right. In this case, I think that this is an example of psychological powers of rhetoric because it gets you to think in a different way. It got me to certainly change my ideal about what it looks like to be male-dominated culture, culturally, if you will, with this idea of who are we showing our bodies or who are we not showing our bodies for. This could also very easily be in advocacy. So it could work in a couple different ways. So we can see how it advocates for this ideal that we open up our eyes to what types of rhetoric and ideologies are being presented to us in regards to who tells us what we should look like, who has power over our bodies, who has power over what we look like, etc. So in this case, this psychological power, I would really look also to any type of meme. Memes are incredibly popular these days in order to psychologically change how you view or see somebody. So that may be a good way to look as well. But when you're identifying something as psychological power, as it says here in the book, it changes the way people think simply by altering the symbolic frameworks they employ to organize their thinking. So if this is typically one of the ways of which we in America are socialized to think, that individuals who are fully covered, oh, they're oppressed, oh, they don't want women to even be seen, they shouldn't even be out of the house, they make them stay all covered up, they only let them see their eyes. Again, it opens up our ideas to an alternative reality and an alternative truth, if you will, and that can psychologically change the way that we view many different factors and things. The last thing that I want to talk to you about is the idea of political power. Political power, in essence, means who has the right to speak, who gets to speak. We can look at this in terms of privilege. Individuals who have power in this society are the ones whose voices get heard. We know that one way to obtain a great amount of power would be through the use of rhetoric. If I can speak, I will be heard. We talked about this on the first day of class, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't the only one who had a dream. A lot of other people did. He knew how to use his rhetoric. And so not only did that give him personal power to employ and to become an individual of whom would be seen as not only an advocate, but as a imperative foundation to social and civil rights in our society. But additionally, it gave him a lot of political power. He had a voice and he was able to use it in a society where an individual who was of color was not supposed to be heard at a time. So over time, if you notice, all of our advertisements and our ideologies are typically framed from this political structure. To who gets to speak, who doesn't, who has a right, who has a voice. Those individuals who are in power have the ability to create what we believe, what we think, and what our stance on particular things is. In this case, if we look at the essence of who is privileged, we look at areas of white, male, heterosexual, Christian, and typically fall in an upper middle class arena. So, how does that individual of privilege create the reality of the world around us? And why do they do so? And what do they maintain? It is suggested that individuals who are in positions of power and privilege often do not recognize their positions of power and privilege. And in turn, they continue to keep the status quo of oppression of other individuals who do not fall into that particular group in order to keep their power as it is. So, for example, if we look at even a simplistic idea from Dolce and Gabbana, this is an incredibly politically powerful advertisement. Why? Well, what does this promote? So not only does this remind us that women should be in a submissive position, but it also does not show her fighting back or trying to get out of this situation, and in fact shows that she maybe likes being held down and looked at by a numerous group of men. When in turn, the reality is that this very much simulates something that looks like rape. It looks like something that looks as if gang rape. It is, again, putting a woman to be objectified for a male gaze. And it reminds us very easily that women are something to be taken over and to have power over. This is a political advertisement because that type of advertisement is the exact reason as to why things like violence happens against women. We are told that they want these types of behaviors on them. So these things go hand in hand in the politics of it. Does it have to work for negative? No. Political power can be used very effectively, like I said, with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., or you can take your advertisements and you can make them into something that is beneficial to the world around you, that would create equity within many people. This, however, chose not to. The next thing that we want to look at is that rhetoric discovers facts. It helps us discover facts and truths that are crucial to decision making. If we look at this advertisement here, we can look at a number of things that have been done within it. This is an advertisement for Alexis, and what they have done is it has both, in my opinion, political, psychological power to it. If we know the psychologicalness that we equate Alexis with the obtaining of a beautiful woman, we can put those two things together. The political power that, again, a woman is something to be looked at. If you see what it is, drive the Tory 900 phone, to see the sports drive around her and see what it's like to race the all-new Lexus, that it's something to be looked at and done. But with all of this information, what are we starting to learn about the car or the advertisement or the product itself? So any type of advertisement that has a bunch of facts on it, or for example, like there was a Burger King ad I saw and it had like what the Burger King burger, or not a Burger King ad, but somebody else's ad, and it had like the Burger King burger and what it looked like and then what it actually looked like when you got it. That's something that would be a great use of social rhetoric. It shows us what we shouldn't waste our time on, and don't expect things to look like they are, and this isn't going to give you what it's supposed to give you, and you shouldn't waste your money doing it, right? Same thing can happen in these other advertisements where they give us information and it helps us to discover facts that we may have never known about before, and whether that be like the issues of global warming to how Alexis works most effectively, that can socially assist in producing change or different ideals in individuals. The other thing that it does is it shapes knowledge. What do we know, and how do we now start to understand what the world around us actually is? Many people get all of their information and all of their truths from things like easy advertisements, or from Facebook memes, or from small GIF snippets. They think that they know an entire story. However, what we want to learn about rhetoric is that that can be a very particular scary thing, as it can shape the knowledge that we have. So when you're looking for advertisements and you want to make this example, okay, I needed to pull up this example, so I pushed pause for a second. But the idea of rhetoric shaped knowledge, and if you're looking to explore this idea with your piece of social rhetoric, we can also look at something like this particular example. We think about rhetoric shaping knowledge in terms of maybe like, oh, I'm going to school and I'm getting knowledge in this way. But it doesn't have to be discovered in, an educational setting or in a book, or that's how knowledge is done. Sometimes an individual asserts one idea and it takes off completely, and it starts to encourage others to build upon this one concept, to go out and seek more knowledge, to go out and seek and build towards the argument. And in regards to this Black Lives Matter, this hashtag Black Lives Matter, I think that this is a very great way that we can look at something shaping knowledge. That once we discover something and we put it out there, obviously this has been a fact for a very long time, that oppressive issues of injustice regarding violence towards individuals of color has existed in our society for quite some time, stemming from our long turmoiled history with slavery, going into our Constitution that didn't decide that individuals of color had a space or a voice. All of these ideals are still very embedded into our system, which leads to things like oppression. But again, if you don't have a voice or a power, who's going to get that ideal across? So we tend to see rhetoric instead shaping our knowledge about individuals of color as being somebody who are thugs, criminals, problematic, part of the problem. Why should we care about their lives mattering? Doesn't everybody's? You'll start to see the anti-rhetoric that will push down a movement such as Black Lives Matter. But in turn, Black Lives Matter can be something that starts to shape knowledge, that like once it asserts itself, it has taken off and it's become a spark in which others will build upon the reason as to why Black Lives Matter, why this is an important movement, why this is something that needs to be looked at and examined, and people will continue to contribute to this dialogue with their own experiences and their own maybe examples to provide for that kind of knowledge. So rhetoric in turn does shape knowledge, and this in the case is also giving us tons of information. If you can see, we can build upon a lot of ideas. It has a lot of personal power, it has psychological power, it has political power, it tests ideas, probably to say, put those out there. It assists in advocacy. We're trying to fight for this particular thing. It discovers facts. This will certainly tell you many a thing of which has happened. Maybe it will. Oh, I guess it doesn't go on any further. But alas, there may be another advertisement that looks different. The last thing that it does is it builds community, and this is such an easy way to see it. In turn, who's coming together for this type of event? Rhetoric can build community, and not only making us aware of something, but what it can do is that it can bring together people who have very like-minded beliefs and values and bring them into some kind of shared communal understanding that could very in fact go out and shape and change the entire world around them. So to whom are they speaking? I mean, this doesn't necessarily have to be like the person across the street and us joining like a neighborhood community. But in turn, we can use it like an online community or perchance a college community and way beyond. So look at different types of rhetoric and who is this speaking to and who is it trying to bring together. The Dove advertising campaign of True Beauty, right? This is all bringing together all women who clearly have a beautiful side to them that they want identified beyond the aesthetic. And so we see that through the advertisement, it's building community of women who are fighting back for this ideal that beauty is on the inside. So I hope that these examples have helped you and given you some guidance as to how you can start building out the content of your speech. We'll go over more in class. See you soon.